So as most of you know, I'm Serena Bishop Gordon. I'm the founder of Special Blend, and I've done Oregon Trail stage race 6 years. This will be my 7th. Colleen is the logistics queen and handles all the behind the scenes. So really allows us to just focus on racing and eating and recovering. And we're super excited to welcome Alex Larson of Alex Larson Nutrition to the podcast. She is a Minnesota-based registered dietitian. She's an endurance athlete, a gravel rider, and she really specializes in helping endurance athletes of all kinds optimize their nutrition for peak performance. And I will say that I've worked with Alex and her team over the years, and it's really changed my life. She has 3 beautiful children. She's an Ironman finisher, and she really takes her personal experience and then also her science-backed research and other research studies to create approachable real-world strategies for all of us to implement and then just have our best races. And Alex, her real focus of her business is one-on-one nutrition coaching. So she also has the Endurance Eats podcast, which is awesome if you haven't listened to it. And she just started a Substack, which is rad. So she's got a lot going on, and I could sing her praises for like the whole hour, but
please don't. That would be really awkward.
So instead of me talking, Alex is going to share with us nutrition and recovery strategies really catered to the Oregon Trail 5-day stage race, and how we might all just get the best out of ourselves and really put all of our training to work through good nutrition recovery.
Yes.
So take it away.
As I was putting this together, I was thinking about how I did not want you all. Can you guys see this? Is this the full screen?
It looks good.
Oh, good.
Yep.
All right. Okay. Awesome. And as I was putting together the final touches this morning, I was like, oh, I really hope this doesn't feel like you guys are drinking from a fire hose with information. But at the same time, because this is recorded and you guys can go back and listen to it multiple times, I would encourage you to do that so that you can pick up on different things throughout this. And the other thing too is, even though I'm a dietitian, I'm not really going to be giving healthy eating guidelines today. Basically, when it comes to Oregon Trail, you're going to take any healthy eating guideline that you've ever heard and you're going to chuck it out the window for the whole week. And we're going to eat kind of like our 12-year-old self would dream to eat, because it's going to be a smorgasbord of lots of embracing the sugar and don't tell your dentists that you're going to be eating like this. Definitely make sure you don't forget your toothbrush, because we're going to get into this, because stage racing is very different than just your one-day event eating. There's a lot of challenges that come with Oregon Trail, and I have not done this race. I will fully admit it. It is 100% on my bucket list to do, hopefully maybe in 2 years. But to me, the biggest challenge of doing a stage race is the cumulative fatigue, the back-to-back physical demand of that fatigue adding up every single day. And it is why I consider a stage race to be an eating contest within a bike race. Nutrition can absolutely make or break your experience, whether you are trying to get on the podium or whether you are just trying to enjoy each and every day and finish. Nutrition is going to play a really big role in that. The fueling decisions that you make on day 1 are going to impact how you feel on day 3, 4, and 5. And I truly feel that how you feel is going to really determine how enjoyable your experience is going to be on the bike. So before we get into the fueling details, I want to share some things so you can understand the why behind the strategies. And so I want to walk through the 2 different fuel tanks that our body has. You can hear me use the term glycogen. That is the form in which carbs are stored in our body. And carbs are our body's preferred source of energy. So it's a very quick and efficient source of energy. we store glycogen in our liver and directly in our muscles, called muscle glycogen. And so what's interesting about liver glycogen is it stores both glucose and fructose for energy. And so when you eat something that will have some fructose in it, that's actually going to get metabolized and stored via the liver, whereas muscle glycogen is strictly just glucose. Liver glycogen has a very limited storage, anywhere from like 80 to 120 grams of carb. The capacity kind of varies from day to day, but it's kind of limited. And that fuel, our liver will release glycogen to fuel basically the entire body, whereas muscle glycogen, it's stored directly in our muscles and gets exclusively used for energy and sourcing our muscles with that. And that capacity there is very large, anywhere from 300 to 900 grams of carb. Like it's a vast range, but it's much, much more than that liver glycogen. And I've shown this before in other presentations, and I use it every single time because it's one of my favorite. I got permission from Asker to use this in my presentations because it's such a good visual. So you can see here with the yellow, that is the fat that's basically stored in our muscles. And this dark yellow is it's just free fatty acids, so fat that's coming from adipose tissue. So if we do burn fat as energy, usually more when we're in that kind of zone 2 lower effort exercise, but you can see here, the red is glucose that's getting released from that liver glycogen, and purple is that muscle glycogen. So you can see as intensity increases in a workout or an exercise, it becomes a much bigger form of energy use, and why it's so significant. And even at like a zone 2 effort, even if you, again, are doing Oregon Trail at more of a zone 2 effort, trying to just sightsee and enjoy the beauty of Oregon, you are still using a lot of carbs, and it's really important to make sure that you are fueling yourself really well so that you can enjoy that experience. So there are 3 different ways that I view optimizing glycogen storage for Oregon Trail. And we are going to talk about all 3 as we go through this. We're going to start with carb loading, because this is one of my favorites to talk about, because it's not just eating a massive amount of food. It's a very strategic way of eating in the days leading up to your race, because we want to top off those muscle glycogen stores and those liver glycogen stores before you go into the race. Because what we've found in some of the latest research is that when you get done with each stage and you start eating and refueling, you're not going to be able to fully reload your muscle glycogen stores from the time you finish the stage to the time you start the next one. And so it's really important that we can go in topped off and not behind. So with carb loading, what we want to aim for is 70 to 80% of your calories coming from carbohydrates 2 to 3 days leading up to the race. So you think of like a bagel instead of a donut, a fruit smoothie instead of a milkshake. So looking for more of those lower fat, higher carb, typically lower fiber, just because if you're doing a lot of carbs that are higher in fiber, you're just going to potentially have some bowel issues during the race. I do find that some protein is good. Probably in the past year, I've been adding a protein target, just a lower protein target to my athletes' carb load, because if they don't get enough protein, they get this weird, like, and even I've had it too in my carb loading, it's like a weird emptiness feeling where you're like, I don't want to eat, but I feel like I am kind of hungry. It's this kind of weird feeling. So usually having some protein throughout the day, not a ton, but some, just kind of helps keep you from having that roller coaster of your blood sugars all over the place. So protein is not definitely, it's a good idea to include some. So in terms of how much carb to do, the guidelines are 8 to 12 grams of carb per kilo body weight. If you do the math, a lot of people have a little bit of sticker shock. It's a lot of food. So if that feels like a lot, you certainly can do 5-6 grams of carb per kilo, do more of a modest carb load. That's going to get you a better result than not doing a carb load at all. And you can just, again, stretch that out to even 3-4 days before the race if you wanted to do a lower amount. But really the object is to load up those glycogen stores, set you up to feel good on day 1 of the race. Oh, I wanted to add one more thing. don't weigh yourself during carb loading, because for every gram of glycogen that you store, our body also stores about 3 grams of water. And so if people are like feeling a little bit like a puffed up chip bag on race day, I'm like, I probably did the carb load right, because you're going to have a little bit more water weight on you, but that's actually a really good thing because you're going into your race well hydrated, because as that glycogen gets released, it also will release that water and help keep you hydrated. Here are a few examples of some of my team and I's favorite carb loading foods, just to give you an idea. This list is also in my carb loading guide. I will make sure to include a link for you guys to access that. I've also got like a decision tree of how to determine kind of your carb loading plan. So these are just some examples. One of my recent carb loads, I had 14 King's Hawaiian rolls that morning while I was sitting at my desk working. And then in the afternoon, I filled up a half-liter bottle full of like super high carb scratch and a couple scoops of regular scratch. I think it was about 120 grams. If I can do a bottle of like a high carb hydration mix, that's one of my favorite things, ways to get enough carbs in, because it just through food alone, it can feel like a little bit too much. So Tailwind has a high carb, use lots of different hydration mixes out there. Whichever one you like best is a really good option to just sneak in some extra carbs by drinking it. When it comes to fueling on the bike itself, you want to start making that plan now, weeks to, if not months in advance of the event itself, because we need to make sure that you've practiced it really well, you have really good gut tolerance. With an event like this, you need at least 60 to 90 plus grams of carb per hour during an event. So if you think of, okay, how many hours are you thinking you're going to be out on that bike? That's a lot of carbs to plan for. And it's really helpful to practice that in your training to see what products you really like, what building up that gut tolerance, being able to handle all that really well and to fuel your training really well. The question I get often is, should you fuel at 120 grams of carb per hour? We're starting to hear about these athletes that are consuming well beyond the 90 grams of carb. And I want to say that for the more higher level athletes that are putting out a lot of watts on their bike, are working really hard in the race, and have the gut tolerance to do that. I've definitely had athletes that have done 100, 110, 120 grams of carb per hour, and they do notice a significant performance benefit, but it's definitely not for all athletes. But for if you're doing the 90 and you're noticing you're still even getting a little bit hungry and fatigued during your training and during your races, where you're like, you know, I feel like I could do more, then I say, yeah, let's bump it up and see how that feels for you. And Colleen was really nice. She sent me a list of all of the fuel that they plan to have at the aid stations. They're going to have Tailwind Endurance Fuel, which is fantastic. Their DeWalter Melon is one of my favorite flavors. Mandarin Orange is really great. Both of them are caffeine free. We'll have goo gels and chews, and then a whole buffet of different food options, which are fantastic. It's nice to have a little bit of variety in terms of flavor. After 5 days of fueling, it's nice to have options to change things up. And then they will have Coca-Cola either at the last aid station or before a big climb. And from my triathlon background, I do know that Coke can really bring people back to life if they're really struggling. So definitely look forward. If you enjoy Coca-Cola, definitely go for it. That little bit of sugar and caffeine hit can really, like I said, bring people back to life, which is fantastic. So I have a mantra that I want you to channel in your training and when you are on the Oregon Trail route, and that is eat before you're hungry, drink before you're thirsty. And why I say that is because a lot of athletes, it can be really easy to get behind on their nutrition. Once you get behind, it's really hard to catch back up. I have, even in my own riding, have experienced the times where I'm like, oh my gosh, I feel like $1,000,000. Like you just feel like you can conquer the world. You feel so good on a bike, and you miss your fueling and hydration, and you get a little behind. And the next thing you know, you're all of a sudden you're there feeling this like fatigue and hunger, and you're starting to bonk, and you're like, no, what's happening? And it's because even though you were feeling like $1,000,000, you still were supposed to fuel and drink and stay on top of that. So make sure that you stick to a schedule. I like to have my bike computer alert me every 15 minutes to remind me to drink and to take in fuel. I also like to front load fueling as well. Usually I'm a little bit more focused and dialed in early on in the race. So I can say, oh, we're 20 minutes into the race. I'm going to just start taking my first bit of fuel and get ahead of it instead of trying to always play catch up. And I try and keep the math really simple. So if I am using a hydration mix in my fluids, I know that I want to drink X amount of fluids every hour, which gets me this much carbs, which means I need to have this many gels every hour to stay on top of my fueling and get enough every hour. So keep the math really simple in terms of hydration mix, gels or chews, and knowing that you're getting enough. And like I said, don't rely on feel. Have a planned amount and schedule and try and stick to that. And I'm always one that tries to hope for the best but plan for the worst. So I always carry an emergency stash of fuel just in case I drop something, so that I still have something on me to keep me on track with my fueling. I did want to talk about caffeine just because most of the aid station items aren't going to have caffeine, with the exception of the Coca-Cola. Caffeine, it's a performance aid, but it's not going to replace fueling strategy. But it certainly is a very great option for people. If you already typically drink caffeine in the morning, you don't want to stray from that routine. So definitely have your usual caffeine in the morning. But in terms of dosage, the recommendation is 3 to 6 milligrams per kilo body weight. So you can figure out how much that is. And if you want to divide it strategically throughout the race day, you certainly can. If you think about when you're starting the race, by the time you finish, it's nice to have a little bit of a caffeine boost to get you through more of those tougher parts of the race. However, with a stage race, do keep in mind that caffeine can impact your sleep. And so thinking of, okay, what time am I hoping to fall asleep this evening to make sure that I'm getting enough rest? I'm going to count back 8 hours from that time and make sure that's the last dose of caffeine, so that I'm not impeding my rest and recovery that evening. So also consider that as well. So I wouldn't be pounding a whole bunch of caffeine at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon if you're wanting to go to bed at a decent time. In terms of hydration, this is also where you can do a little bit of homework. It's really helpful because everyone's sweat rate is a little bit different, is understanding what your sweat rate is. You can do a simple at-home sweat test where you're weighing yourself before and after a workout. Usually you want the workout to be at least an hour, but not so long that you would have to pee during the workout. And I've got instructions and a sweat rate calculator. I've got the link here. It's just on my blog on my website. It's very easy to do. Just gives you an idea of, on average, what your typical sweat rate is. Obviously, it can be a little bit different on race day because you might be doing a little bit different effort. You certainly could try and do a sweat test maybe in 50, 60 degree weather, 80, 85 degree weather, understanding how your sweat rate would change with different environments. And that way you can kind of figure out, okay, if I'm losing, let's say on average, a liter of sweat an hour, which is typically the average for most athletes, you would want to be drinking at least 75 to 80% of your sweat losses every hour. So if you're going to be out there for 4, 5, 6 hours, you don't want to get yourself too dehydrated, that takes a lot of work to drink that much. So you really want to be on top of that and thinking about, okay, am I carrying enough on me between aid stations? And then if you're carrying a hydration vest, the one thing that I do hear from cyclists is they're unsure of how much they've been drinking with a hydration vest, because obviously you can't be aware of it like you would with a bottle. And the way that I do this with a hydration vest is counting your gulps of fluid. So one gulp is typically around an ounce. So if you think of like your college days, if you would take a shot, that's an ounce, right? So if you take a drink from your hydration vest, counting your gulps will help you think through, okay, if I need to drink 3/4 of a liter every hour, I need to be having 4 to 6 gulps of water every 15 minutes. And so when your alarm goes off every 15 minutes on your bike computer, you count those gulps, and that will help you stay on top of that hydration if you're using a hydration vest, which I would recommend for most people in an Oregon Trail setting, just because it's mid-July, there's going to be a lot of sweating happening. And so you often can't carry quite as many bottles on your bike, and a hydration vest is a really easy way, especially in more like technical terrain. You still can access those fluids without grabbing your bottle. Just to touch on electrolytes, when we talk about electrolytes, my main focus is sodium because that's that primary electrolyte lost in sweat. Electrolyte loss varies greatly. Okay, I've seen athletes that have gotten tested where they're losing 500, 600 milligrams of sodium per liter of sweat, all the way up to I've seen athletes at over 2,000 milligrams. So it varies greatly. It's mainly a genetic thing. Obviously, when you are sweating a lot more in hotter conditions, you might be losing more salt. And people typically have an inkling if they're sweaty salters. Or salty sweaters, sorry. Salty sweaters. If they have if their clothes kind of, the sweat dries on their clothes and there's like salt stains, like white stains on them, if they are really chronic crampers, if they get really bad headaches after longer, harder rides where they sweated a lot, that might be an indicator that we need to up electrolytes. You could consider doing a sodium preload. I'm a big fan of that in the summer, where an hour or so before you start your ride, you would take in anywhere from 500 to 1,500 milligrams of electrolyte of sodium. So looking at your electrolytes and what you're consuming, taking that about an hour beforehand gives enough time for you to empty your bladder before you get on the bike, and get you a little head start on with the sodium preload. If you are someone that does do like a bicarb, a sodium bicarb product before your races, that would count as your sodium preload. You don't have to do that in addition because that bicarb is already very, very high in sodium. And then you would want to probably consider increasing electrolytes on the bike as well. If you're just drinking plain water all day long, that can put you at risk for what we call hyponatremia, where you have a low sodium blood plasma level, and that can actually be pretty dangerous. So you do want to make sure that you are replacing some of those electrolytes that you are losing. All right, on to the recovery. This is the fun part, because once people cross the finish line, they're like, oh, I can rest and relax and have all this fun. But there is still work to do. Your priority really has to go into restoring glycogen stores, rehydrating, helping your body repair those muscles and rebuild, and then rest. And that has to be the top priority over everything else. That is what's going to help sustain you in getting through the 5 days. So here's my outline, okay? And this is pretty detailed. You don't have to follow this to an exact T, but it's to give you an idea of how I would optimize this for an athlete. And that first hour after you get off the bike, that is the most crucial hour, because our body does all of these really amazing things that help us really recover at the fastest rate possible. So when I say first 30 minutes, that would be great, but really that whole hour after you get off the bike is the magical hour, because like I said, our body is doing some really cool things. And so what I would be looking at, because you're not going to have much of an appetite likely, is you're going to be looking for some liquid carbs. Typically, if people don't have an appetite, they still are thirsty and they can drink their carbs that way. And then you also can get in some protein. So you could do a protein drink and or a sports drink, or some sort of product that's going to have both carbs and protein in there. And I would get that in within the first 30 minutes, because obviously it takes some time to digest that and absorb that. Within 2 hours, I like for people to have some sort of meal. Make sure it's heavy on the carbs, again, getting some good protein in. And then at dinner, I would have that be a little bit more protein focused, again, probably that 30, 40 grams. And I did add in here a note about tart cherry juice. There's actually some really good research on that having anti-inflammatory benefits with its high antioxidant content. It supports sleep. You don't necessarily have to do this. I just wanted to add that in there because sometimes people ask about supplements. And then before bed, if you are someone that's a plant-based eater and you don't do dairy, you could certainly do a plant-based protein drink. But you also, if you do a dairy base that's got casein protein, what's interesting about casein, and it's not the most common protein powder that you can find on the market, but it is available out there. And you could either do like a milk protein concentrate that will have both whey and casein. But what's interesting about casein, it's a very slow release protein. Whey is very quick, right? Everything's mostly is like a whey protein isolate, but casein takes a while to digest. It slow releases that protein. So it really can help provide that steady supply overnight and help with recovery. Now you might have noticed I said every hour having a sucrose-based carbs. And why I say that is because sucrose, so basically sugar, is 50% fructose, 50% glucose. And what that's going to do is it's going to feed both your muscles and your liver. Because like I said, that liver will take in fructose and store that as glycogen because we want to fill up both of those tanks. So looking at sports drinks that use regular sugar, a lot of sports products will have both glucose or dextrose and a fructose in there, or a maltodextrin and a fructose. So just make sure you're checking ingredients on any like fuel-based stuff. Honey will be a sucrose, maple syrup, any of those types of things will definitely help with reloading those glycogen stores throughout the day. And then with fluids, I do encourage most fluids to have electrolytes in there. If you're going to drink plain water, I wouldn't drink massive amounts of it, again, because we're trying to make sure that we're reloading and replenishing those sodium losses. Anytime you drink plain water, I'd be doing it maybe with a meal that's already going to have some salt with it. So just something to consider there. And then in the morning, breakfast, you want it to be carb-centric, some protein, keep it lower fat, lower fiber, but I find in the mornings for a lot of athletes, just race nerves can kind of kill their appetite. So you have a backup plan with maybe like a sports drink, be drinking that along with any of your typical habitual caffeine that you have in the morning as well. You could do that sodium preload, drinking 24 to 32 ounces, so about 3/4 to a liter of fluids, and doing that sodium preload if you're not doing any other products. And then I like to do a last minute top off, usually 10-15 minutes before the start. I will take some fast carbs. That's one of my favorite hacks to do in training and at races. It just kind of gets me already have some fuel in my system, helping spare some of that muscle glycogen to keep me feeling strong throughout the race. Now, what makes Oregon Trail especially challenging is not only the fatigue, the cumulative fatigue, and your appetite be potentially decreasing, but also you guys are camping. So I'll make sure to have Serena kind of talk about her best practices when camping at Oregon Trail. Liquid calories are definitely your friend. And because you guys have a limit in how much weight can be in your storage totes, I would recommend bringing a lot of powdered things and just adding water to that. Salty foods, you could bring those instant soup broths if you're really struggling with some nausea. Doing some cold broth might be really well tolerated. Small amounts of food throughout the day if you're really not feeling like you want to eat, having those frequently versus trying to eat larger quantities can definitely help. So thinking on your feet as you go through the day, I think can really helpful, but also making sure that you go in with some sort of plan, having a routine written out of how you're going to fuel yourself throughout the day, and thinking through okay, there's going to be different foods that are served at meals, but also what kind of snacks can I bring that I am going to feel like eating, days 1 through 5. And how can I practice with that in training? How can I get done with my training sessions and go right into my recovery routine and make sure that I've got that dialed in and it feels good to be in that normal routine when you're camping on the Oregon Trail. And really make sure that nutrition is that priority, because truly it can make and break your experience and your race. And it is just one of the things that can really help set you up for a great event. All right, with that, these are my resources that Serena kind of mentioned at the beginning. I'd be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, I'm just looking at into the chat, and Joshua asked, is it possible to break your recommendations of protein down to grams per kilo of weight instead of 20 to 30 grams, or do you think it's actually not that important?
I don't think it's that important in terms of total protein with a stage race. If it was just like day-to-day eating, absolutely. The recommendations are like 1.5 to 2 grams of protein per kilo. But 2 grams of protein per kilo would be a lot during a stage race. It just would be because you're limited in from the time you finish to the time you go to bed. It becomes a game of like, okay, let's get enough protein to support recovery, but also we need to get enough carbs to reload glycogen stores and still want to, like food by the end of like by day 5. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't say there's necessarily I'd give a protein per kilo recommendation, maybe like 1.2 to 1.5, but your day's kind of limited. And that's where once you get done with the race, that recovery is going to take at least a week for you to really fully get back to baseline.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. Colleen, I'm going to ask you this question. So will electrolytes be available before each day to fill your hydration packs and bottles? And then secondarily, will carb drink mixes and electrolytes be available at the aid stations? What about sodium tablets? And will there be protein bedtime snacks? And I'll just answer that one. If you have specific protein bedtime rituals, bring your own. Don't count on the race to provide extra bedtime snacks.
I love that. So as far as the morning of, we'll have a morning fuel station that we set up where you fill your water bottles up, and we'll have both Tailwind Nutrition hydration mix there, and then some gels from Goo Nutrition. At the aid stations, we'll have both of those. We'll also have some chews, and I'm working on getting the sodium tablets, so we'll also have those. So yes, we'll have the drink mixes, and we don't mix it. It'll be we'll have scoops for you, so you mix it to your own preference and what you need. And as Alex mentioned, we're going to make sure that the drink mixes don't have caffeine in it, because last year we had a little bit too much caffeine in our drink mixes, and we'll have options with the gels. So it'll be caffeinated and non-caffeinated at the aid stations in the morning as well. In addition to that, when you come in and finish at the expo or at the camp that day, Tailwind Nutrition will be there doing recovery drinks. So they'll be shaking up recovery drinks. So hopefully every person comes in, they'll go by the booth, they'll grab a recovery drink. So as they're walking their bike in, before you get out of your chamois, you're drinking a recovery drink right away. And then we'll have our snack shack, which is food and sandwiches and extra things before dinner.
Awesome. And I will just reiterate both what Alex and Colleen said. When you cross the finish line, top priority is to get out of your chamois and to get your recovery. And your recovery is going to be there. And so just grab it and then go to your tent, get your stuff, but get your recovery drink before you try to find your tote. The day can slip away. And if you take that moment to grab your recovery straight away, you are going to not miss it. And it's really easy to get distracted or talk to other people about their races or whatever. So make that a priority and then get out of your chamois. Joshua, the aid stations do not allow for bottle drops. So you can mix using the drink mix available at the aid stations to your own liking. That won't be pre-made, but there is no bottle drop at the aid stations. And Tailwind will be the hydration sponsor, and then Goo Energy gels will be at the aid stations and at the beginning. Will camp have tart cherry juice? I'm guessing it's bring your own tart cherry juice.
Yeah, most probably. Yeah, we'll try to source some, but I doubt we can get enough. Really. Yeah.
Let's see. I think that. Okay. Anybody else have questions? Oh, well, wait.
Let me just add to if people have more questions. With Tailwind, they do make a naked, like plain flavor. And so if you want to concentrate your bottles a little bit more, but you don't want the flavor to be too strong, you could bring with some of that plain and add it in with your drink mix, either, at the race start or wherever. And that also, I've had a lot of athletes that do that. If they don't like the flavor to be too strong in their products.
And my recommendation is if you have specific needs or desires, bring your own. It is worth it. You've spent too much time and too much energy and money training for this race to show up on race day and not have what you need at the beginning of the race. So my preference would be, about what miles per hour you're going to be riding, how many miles accumulatively are during that week, and then calculate how many grams of carbohydrates you're going to need for those 5 days, and then figure out how you're going to take it in what form. So is it chews, is it gels, is it hydration mix? But I would say bring everything that you think you're going to need, and then use what's at the aid stations or use what's in the morning. If you've miscalculated or you think, oh my gosh, these days are taking longer than I expected or whatever. But I would really rely on what you know and what you have, so that you have control and you're not, oh my God, I don't have what I need.
Yeah. And test out some of the, like, if you can pick up some Tailwind or pick up some GU products and test it out in your training. I think that even if you don't want to use them, if you have to grab something from the aid station as a emergency option, that way you've tested it in advance, that you tolerate it really well. And personally, I've sampled all of the hydration, this was a couple years ago and there's probably some new ones now, but I've traced it over 25 of them all at once. I mixed them all up in red solo cups. And Tailwind I was like, what, I can see why this is a very popular product, because it really is just it tastes great. The flavors are, in terms of strength of flavor, it was perfect. So I'm a big fan of Tailwind, and I'm pretty brand agnostic, but they do a really nice job with their hydration mixes. And it's got a pretty good amount of sodium too. I think it's around 350 milligrams of sodium per scoop. So it's got a good dose of electrolytes in there, which is nice.
Gus has his hand raised. Do you want to go off mute, Gus, and ask your question?
Yeah, just a quick question. I was a little late to this, but is it possible to get access to the slides after the call?
Yes, we'll record this whole presentation. Yep, and send it out for sure. And apologies for anyone who was on the other link that was going to you nowhere. But we will send the entire presentation and recording out after this. Yeah, Daniel.
My bad. No question.
Oh, come on. You got to come up with a question. No, Alex did such a good job. She's answered all our questions. Yeah, and if you do want to rely on Tailwind and GU at the aid stations in the beginning, test them out ahead of time. And I think that makes a huge difference just in comfort level. Alex was asking me before we jumped on the call, what were some of my must-haves in regards to nutrition during the race? And it's like, oh, that's such a great question. I want to have my own snacks. So snacks that I really like: Pop-Tarts, pretzels of whatever form you like, dried sugar cereal, which I don't really eat in real life, but during stage races, I love sugar cereal. It's also really light, so you can put it in your bin without adding a bunch of weight. I'm picky, so I bring my own shaker bottle and I bring my own recovery mix. Colleen and the team at Breakaway will have that, but I really like to do that. I also bring a couple of tubes of GU electrolyte tablets and my own water bottle. And I just walk around with my water bottle all the time, like liter Nalgene, because you're not gonna overhydrate, and you have to get up in the night to pee. That's okay. That would be a really good sign. The days are really long, and it's important that when you get back to camp, you fueled your ride, you get more food. And even if you're like, oh my gosh, dinner's in an hour and a half, go to the snack shack, get a sandwich, get your recovery. This is not a time to be thinking about, oh, should I have an extra cookie? Just eat the extra cookie. Speaking of which, Jen asked, are there going to be regular food at the aid stations like cookies, granola bars, and fruit? Colleen, I believe that will be the case, but do you want
Yes. Yeah, we'll have a whole lot of regular food. We're going to have fruit, bananas, oranges, and then we'll have snacky food. So think pretzels, we'll have Nutella, honey, peanut butter. We'll have salty chips, pickles, pickle juice. I'm trying to think of some other things, but we try to do granola bars, things that you can easily stick in your jerseys and ride off with as well. So let's see.
Tracy's question.
Yes, I am. Tracy, great question about celiac. There will be gluten-free snacks at all the aid stations. Celiac's kind of different thing. Shoot me an email and we can kind of talk about that, because I want to prepare you and prepare our teams to make sure we address it correctly at the aid stations. But yes, they're going to be gluten-free options for sure at all of our aid stations.
Awesome. Thank you.
I did have a question, Serena, in terms of like, so if I were doing Oregon Trail this year, this is what I would ask. Is there campfires? Like if I brought like a really light aluminum kettle so that I could like boil some water, like because for me, I get really tired of sweet things and all I want is like salty savory. So I'm like, cup of noodles would be so light to pack and I would eat those every single evening, just as like a salt carb bomb. But I'd want to have like boiling water to like make sure I cooked it. So it's like, is there campfires where I could like put a little kettle and boil some water and do something like that?
So we do have campfires, but not in that situation. What I would recommend and what I've done is bring a little jet boil stove or another camping stove. And then I would defer this question to Colleen. There might be opportunities to have a carafe of boiling water in the evening for people who want tea or a cup of noodles. There are also charging stations for all your electronics. So you could bring an electric kettle. However, I think people might be a little bit upset if you plugged your electric kettle in next to their Garmin or Wahoo or whatever. So there are some power outlets, but it's really limited. So I don't know, Colleen, do you have a better answer to that?
Yeah, I actually do. And I love that you brought up the cup of noodles, and because we're working on that to bring those to the snack shack, because cup of noodles and then like the little cups of mac and cheese or the snack shack. And if you guys, so you don't know, or those who are new, because we have 70% first time riders, the snack shack is once you finish your ride, say 2 or 3 o'clock, it's kind of the gap to get you to dinner. So we'll have sandwiches, we'll have a bunch of food, snacky food, but we try to make it substantial. So we put lots of like the sandwiches, we'll put a lot of protein, a lot of turkey or whatever on there. We'll have hummus, we'll have a whole bunch of options, veggies, but we are bringing in cup of noodles this year. We'll have some kettles. We'll hopefully are getting the little mac and cheese cups. And so I will make it a note to put up, we usually put little snackies out after dinner. So like a little bit of extra chocolate or some extra chips and stuff. So I'll put a kettle out at that table as well. So if anybody wants to do some more late night snacking, they'll have the kettle or tea. That's a great option. Yeah.
Yeah. And add lots of honey to your tea, because that would be a good option too.
Yeah. Well, and as everyone is noticing already, Colleen wants to make your experience as best as possible. So if there are things that pop up between now and race day, I can't guarantee that she's going to be able to make it happen. But just as simple as like, oh, can we get boiling water in the evening? And she's like, oh yeah, let's figure out how to make that work. So, and Colleen, I apologize if you want to kill me for saying this, but Colleen is amazing at trying to cater to the needs of the riders. So if you have a request, I can't guarantee that she can deliver, but she will do her best. So
we know that you guys are, one, you're spending a whole week with us. So we're really, really thankful that you're coming and hanging out with us. You're putting a lot out there on course. So we want to make sure that you are able to start the next day and enjoy the next day. And the courses are hard. So we're doing everything that we can to support you. If you guys have certain ideas, if you've been to Oregon Trail and you think that, you know, there might be something good to add, shoot me an email. Things like honey. I love the idea of honey at night with the kettles. Coffee in the morning. This is a really, really important thing. Yes, we are going to have coffee in the morning. We have our coffee system better than last year. If you came last year, our coffee was kind of delayed. I can't ride without coffee either. I can't function without coffee. So we are going to we'll have a coffee starting to brew at 4 a.m. every morning.
Awesome. And yeah, 50 pounds for the bins. And Colleen was letting us know that if your bin is over, you'll get charged by the pound, and your bin will be weighed every day. So if it starts at 58 pounds, But then you eat a lot of your nutrition and food that you put in there. By day 3, maybe you'll be down at 48 pounds. Then you don't have to pay extra.
The incentive to eat a lot of food
Yeah,
after day 1.
You'll pay, how much is it per pound, Colleen?
$2 per pound.
$2 per pound.
And
And
if you need a second tote, I'm sorry, I'm just seeing. So if you do need a second tote, you need to email me. We are sold out totes, so I'll have a wait list for a second tote. If you feel like your totes are going to be over 50 pounds, we just started a wait list. So you guys being on the webinar, we'll get top priority. Just shoot me an email, let me know, put you on the wait list for the totes.
awesome. Yeah, Joshua.
Sorry, is the tote different from like the box you all move around?
It's the same thing.
Same thing. Okay.
Yeah, the big black one with the yellow lid.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Let's see. So, Tracy, I don't really understand your question. Since I'm celiac, do I put my snacks in my tote then? Right. Sorry for the first timer. Anything that you want transported from the beginning of the race throughout each day needs to go in your tote, unless you're carrying it with you. So I would say, yes, that would be true for you. And then Joshua, we were just talking about, do you bring food and snacks? Lots of food will be provided, but if you have special snacks that you want, you can bring those. But race food, aid station food, breakfast, snack shack, dinner, snacks, those are all part of your registration. Yeah, and if you want to go off mute, Joshua, and ask a question.
Yeah, I remember reading that you could bring like an extra wheel set. Would that be go in your tote, or is that a separate?
That is a completely separate thing. Great question. You can bring an extra wheel set. It just needs to be in either a case, a bag, or in a box. No naked wheels, just because we want to keep your wheels safe. So, and it does not count in your 50 pounds for your tote bin.
And if anybody needs an extra wheel bag, I have a couple that I'm willing to lend out for the race. So you can send me a note and I can bring them to.
I can answer Emma's question here. She asked about hydration pack. Would you recommend electrolyte mix in that rather than water? Ratio of water to electrolyte mix to carry on the bike. So with a hydration pack, I would recommend doing something like a Tailwind or whatever kind of hydration mix where it's got both carbs, electrolytes, and fluids in there. You're already having to carry water on you, which is going to obviously add weight to your bike. You might as well have it also supply you some electrolytes and some carbs. When you look at how much carbs you need to be eating on the bike, 60 to 90 plus grams of carb per hour, and the hydration mix is a really nice way to take up a good chunk of that carbs. So looking at different hydration mixes, how much carbs they're going to have in them. And usually they say 1 to 2 scoops per bottle, but with your hydration mix, because you can put 1 to 2 liters in them, you can add quite a few scoops and drink that throughout your race. And then obviously you can refill at an aid station as needed. So I'm a big fan of hydration mixes on the bike. And I like a vest, especially some of those more technical sections of the race where you can just grab that straw and drink right there and keep your hands on the handlebars. That's one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah, and I would just echo what Alex said. I think so many of us have been conditioned to not drink our carbohydrates. You know, we want like electrolytes only or low carb drink mix. And in this case, get as many carbs into all of your pockets and
you will be so thankful.
Yeah, so really this is that time to think about and train and practice. Don't just do it when you get to the race. Be as prepared as possible. So on any ride over, I would say 90 minutes to 2 hours, really start thinking about fueling at, somewhere between that 60 to 90 grams per hour and see how you go. And then you can slowly add. If you are not fueling anywhere close to that, don't all of a sudden start trying to fuel at 90 grams an hour. Start with 30, see how that feels, and gradually increase.
Yeah, it's nice that we have a couple months until the race that you guys can prep for this now, because it will take a little bit of time to practice that. But once you start fueling more, honestly, like I just think of my athletes that it's like a video game to them where they feel like they just like leveled up. Like they're just like that this whole, not only do they feel better in their riding, but then they feel better the rest of the day too, because they're not in this huge energy hole because they actually took in enough carbs during their ride. So really embrace the carbs and the sugar on the bike. You think of these major muscles that you have constant motion, putting out watts to get yourself moving. It requires a lot more energy than what people think.
Yeah. A couple of questions that just popped in. What facilities will be at camp to wash out bottles and packs? Each camp spot has a number of hoses and fountains. I would say don't plan on access to like hot running soapy water to do that, unfortunately, unless you want to take them in the shower with you. I've simply just rinsed them out each day, and it's only 5 days, but you'll probably be okay if you rinse them out, even the hydration packs straight away. But don't let them sit overnight. Let's see, in regards to the courses being posted, we didn't mention that yet. Bad Chad will post them a little bit closer to the race. Usually they come out a couple weeks ahead of time. A lot of that depends on what roads are clear and open as he finalizes his permits. Let's see what else. And Sean was just saying to test out carbs in your bottles and packs 100%. For Sean, liquid carbs don't work for his stomach. So I would say 100% try that out and see what might work. And if one high carb hydration mix hasn't worked for you, try another one. And that might be an option because everybody's stomach is going to respond differently. But chewing that many carbs for me personally is very difficult, especially in a race where you're eating constantly on the bike.
The one thing I didn't mention was I mentioned this a little bit with sports fuel and making sure it has both glucose and fructose in it. I have noticed with some athletes where if they have something that if they're too much glucose, that in that kind of 4 or 5, 6 hour mark of their event, they start to get kind of this like bloated abdomen. And what's happening is our body can only absorb so much glucose at a time. So that glucose will ferment in your gut and you feel really bloated. So making sure you're getting plenty of that fructose with your sports fuel can help alleviate that. Because again, fructose gets metabolized through the liver. So you're getting this like dual absorption rate and you can take in more carbs per hour and tolerate it better. So just when you are picking out a hydration mix, just make sure that you see there's some fructose in there. Tailwind and Goo, those ones all do. But just any of the other products, if you're bringing anything in and testing things out, that would be something to look for too. Question about should we avoid fats at aid stations? Not necessarily. There was only a few products that maybe had some peanut butter or like Nutella in it. As long as you're not consuming huge amounts, that fat is typically probably going to be fine. But if you are going at a pretty hard effort and it's really hot out, you might want to just stick to more of those like quick, easy to digest carbs with the aid stations.
Jason, yeah, no showering for 5 days. Just kidding. Yeah, there are showers at each camp spot, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah, we've got shower trucks that it's a pretty good system. Yeah. So you don't have to worry about that. I think there might be one camp where we actually use the showers at a high school, but yeah, definitely plenty of options to clean up in hot water. Bring your own towel, bring your own shampoo and soap, anything you need for the shower. And Emma, yeah, carrying all of this food can get cumbersome. And so thinking really strategically about the mass to carbohydrate grams is something that I think about a lot. Carrying them in a small frame bag is a great idea. There's top tube bags. I use one from Revelate that's magnetic, so it's really easy to open and close. I recommend pre-opening all of your packages except for gels so that you don't have to fumble with them while you're riding. So there are a lot of tricks and tips. We are going to have an equipment webinar and we can talk more about like what your bike setup could look like and what bags. But I would recommend, again, practicing. So, okay, I'm heading out for a 6-hour ride. How am I going to carry all these carbohydrates? Or am I going to stop at the aid station and I don't need to bring quite as many? And just practicing with that and figuring out what works for you and what allows you to easily access that food. Because if it's in a place that you have to unzip while and you can't do that while riding, you're probably not going to eat as much. So you want to make sure that stuff tastes relatively good to you. At some point, it becomes a job and you're not going to be psyched on eating, but the best you can, avoid the flavor fatigue and make it accessible so that you actually eat it. Yeah.
You will be tired of eating at the end of the 5 days. Like for me, when I go to Serena's gravel camps, like when I get to the airport, I'm so excited for like a Caesar salad and like that pork ragu that's at the Portland airport. Like I get it every time, and it's just like this savory, salty, like I just am so excited for it because I hadn't had vegetables in like 3-4 days.
Yeah, it becomes a job, and people are like, "Oh, I didn't feel like eating," or the gel flavors I had weren't appetizing to me. It's like it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it's a skill to be able to take that, and even if you don't want, if your brain's saying no and you don't want it, you still have to take it, because otherwise you aren't going to feel great and you're not going to be able to cross the finish line each and every day feeling good.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Alex, I want to be really aware of your time and say thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge. Huge knowledge bomb. Thanks to everyone for joining. If you have questions for Alex, if you want to learn more about the services she provides with her one-on-one nutrition coaching, she has a great website. You can find her in all these places here. And we're going to send out her information as well as this recording in the next couple of days through the Oregon Trail email list. And if you have more questions, reach out. And if there are topics that you want to cover that we didn't cover, let us know, because we've got a couple more webinars coming up about camp life and about equipment and anything else you guys want to hear about. Awesome. Thanks again, Alex. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.